Hello ladies and gentlemen, ChaosWulff here, and welcome to my very first subscriber spotlight, featuring DrFrankenboink. But that is a bit of a mouthful, so I'm just going to refer to him through the course of this replay as Boink. Now Boink is driving his T110E4 here on Serene Coast, and he starts off by making his way to the western flank. And he is accompanied by the M103, the IS-7, the T-34 and a Super Pershing, as well as the AMX 1390. Now as Boink moves up into position, his platoon mate has noticed that very few people are actually going down towards the peninsula, and has turned around to take that flank himself. But Boink decides that his tank is more suited to the western flank than the east, so he decides not to follow his comrade down there and continues on down the 1-2 lines. Now we have spotted our first enemy, the WZ-132, but he's just recently dropped off the radar. And now we spot the T-28 Prot coming up on the opposing flank, and now we have a good chunk of the enemy team all spotted. And now Boink is almost in position with a good selection of targets for his 155mm cannon. Now he gets himself spotted, fires over at the lurver, hits him but does no damage. Now as reloading, he decides to change position as he has been spotted already in that position and does not want to poke up twice in the same spot. Now he's nearly reloaded, thinks about taking a shot over at the enemy E4 but changes his mind and switches his focus over to the enemy lurver, takes a shot and takes a good chunk of health out of the lurver, all whilst dodging incoming artillery shells. Now even though artillery has already fired, there's no sense sitting still. He moves around a little bit back and forth, moves up and sets his sights on the enemy Prot, which drops off the radar and then comes back up again. He sits, takes aim. Bye bye T-28. Now he does take a big hit from his counterpart on the enemy team, which shaves off around about a third of his health. And our Object 704 takes out the enemy AMX 5100. Now if you've been paying attention to the minimap, you'll have noticed that there's a big cluster of enemy tanks on the edge of the peninsula being held back by a solitary IS-4. Now Boink sees this and decides that this is probably a good time to switch flanks, as the enemy on this flank are quite content on sitting back and just sniping. There's only one tank that's up ahead, and that's the WZ-111. The WZ-132 has not been spotted for a little while, but he could be anywhere, but he'll pop up again in a minute. Now I've skipped ahead as not much happened whilst he was changing flank. But we can now see the dire situation the IS-4 has gotten himself in, trying to hold off a full health E100 and a T110E5 all by himself, and he's on perilously low health. But right now both of those enemy tanks are very reluctant to move forward, knowing that there is a T110E3 waiting for them on the corner. They don't know at this moment that Boink has actually moved around to reinforce this flank. But it's precisely that moment that artillery decides to end his platoon mate's game, which gives the E100 and the E5 the push they need to push on around this corner. But little do they know, there is a loaded Boink waiting for them, and his next shot takes a good chunk of health out of the E100. But the E100 and the E5 are not paying attention up to the Super Pershing and Boink himself. They are wanting to get rid of the IS-4, which gives him enough time to reload and put a second shot into the side of the turret of the E100, who is then finished off by artillery. And now Boink has another problem. The enemy Waffenträger auf Panzer IV has been spotted on the peninsula as well. So he sits back and reloads, looking for a shot on the American heavy. But things get even worse when the mighty Jaeger is spotted on the peninsula. Pulling forward at this point would just be suicide. So instead he stays fixed on that corner, looking for a shot on the T110E5, hoping for it to poke out again. Now despite those two very scary tank destroyers on the peninsula, the Super Pershing decides to move forward to take a shot and takes a hit from the Waffenträger auf Panzer IV, but thankfully takes no damage from it. The Jaeger lines up, but thankfully rushes his shot and misses, letting Boink move forward and putting a good shot into the Jaeger's lower plate. As Boink backs off to reload, the Super Pershing moves forward to take another shot over those two tank destroyers. And it's at that point the E5 pulls forward again and takes a shot over at the Pershing, but thankfully again does no damage. He then takes another shot at the Super Pershing and backs off. Boink is now spotted So again, pulling forward would be suicide. He's looking up, trying to get a shot over at the Waffenträger, but he gets spotted again and moves back. Now the E5 is back out again, so he moves up, trying to get a shot on him, and the E5 takes a shot at the Super Persian, but backs off before Boink can get any return fire on him. It's at this point the Super Persian decides to pull forward to take another shot, but gets absolutely annihilated by the mighty Jägerü. Now Boink sees his chance to move up and take a shot at the Jägerü, but doesn't spot the E5 and takes a good hit from him, and unfortunately bounces his shell from the German TD. Now taking another look at the minimap, things don't seem to be going very well. The vast majority of the team has clustered around the cap to try and protect it. And with the loss of the 704, the team is now losing 6-9. But right now Boink is the only one stopping the enemy from steamrolling this flank. He moves forward, gets a spot on the E5, puts a good shot into his commander's cupola, but unfortunately it was a low roll and leaves him on 48 hit points. But it has forced him to pull back, and he most likely won't want to be poking out around that corner again. Although Boink is still reluctant to move around this corner, as he does remember that there are two very scary TDs on the peninsula still. But he inches forward very carefully, trying to get some spots on the two TDs, and decides to side scrape to try and get some spots and shots over. He spots the E5 making a run for it, takes a speculative shot over at him but misses. He's spotted, so he backs off again. But he hasn't spotted either of the German TDs, so they could have relocated, or they could just have been reloading. So he decides to move forward again, trying to get a look. Comes around the corner and spots the Jägerü, but no time to sit and take a shot, so he just rushes forward to get himself behind cover. But as he just gets himself around, he's tracked by the slippery E5. But as he can't take out the E5, he makes a split-second decision and takes out the Waffenträger Panzerfield. But now Boink is in a bit of an uncomfortable situation. He may be behind cover, but the Jägerü is still sitting on the peninsula. So if he moves to chase down the two tanks attacking Cap, he will be exposing his flank to the German TD. And things are beginning to look desperate. That is, until he proxy spots the Jägerü in the water behind him, which frees him up to get the hell out of there, as that tier 10 German behemoth is not known for its speed. So he moves up towards Cap to support his teammates by flanking the enemy. Now he moves up behind this rock and proxy spots the WZ-111, who has no time to react before he executes him. Now it's at this point that Boink decides to load his first round of premium, as at this point every shot needs to count, as the enemy E4 is pushing up on Cap. Now he pauses for a minute to finish reloading, and the E4 takes out the Löwe. So he takes this opportunity to push forward and close the distance with his counterpart. Can he beat his reload? Come on, can he do it? Yes, he can. But the enemy E4 seems to be a little bit upset as to being taken out by his counterpart, and decides to call Boink a gold noob, despite it being the first round he's fired all game. But before Boink can actually reload, the IS-6 pulls up, but he angles his armour and bounces a gold shot from him, and doesn't bounce in return. And that is kill number 5, he just needs one more for a top gun. But there's no time to rest, as the Jägerü's finally managed to push up on Cap, and he's accompanied by the Tiger II. Now he pokes her around the corner trying to get a shot over. The Jägerü drops off the radar, and there he is again. He pulls back, takes his shot, but rushes it a little bit too much, as he doesn't want to sit out in front of that Jägerü too long, and bounces the shot. So he pulls back behind cover to reload. Now the IS-8 is doing a good job at side scraping and keeping the two enemy tanks spotted, which means Boink doesn't have to expose himself any more than necessary. Now the Jägerü pops up again, but is focused on the IS-8. Boink aims and takes a nice chunk of health off the German behemoth, who in turn donks his shot against the IS-8, which will leave Boink enough time to finish his reload and be able to come out and take a carefully aimed shot, as the reload time on the Jägerü is not exactly quick. Now he moves out, takes a shot from the Tiger II, but executes the Tiger II in return. Decides to move up, keeping the rock in between him and the Jägerü, and artillery narrowly misses him. Now he carries on going rather than going straight after the Jägerü, as he doesn't know whether or not he has actually decided to move around or not. And after single-handedly equalising this game, he doesn't want to be taken surprise by a Jägerü. It looks like there was no need to worry, as the German TDs decided not to flank, and is instead tunnel visioning on the IS-8. He moves forward, leaving Boink free to terminate him. And he quickly jumps back into cover to avoid return artillery fire. But this is no time to relax, as there's artillery to find and precious little time to do it. Now their best chance at victory is sticking together. If they split up, they risk giving artillery enough time to kill one and reload. So he asks the IS-8 if he can go and spot artillery while he offers covering fire. But after seeing just how little time they actually have left, he realises that the best hope they have is for them to stick together and move towards Cap. So he asks the IS-8 to follow him and pings the map to show him which way to go. Because at the moment, artillery could be anywhere on the map. But the usual spots for artillery to be are either going to be down along the K-line, or around about J12-ish. And Boink doesn't want to waste precious seconds searching for artillery. So his plan is to go and sit on Cap and make artillery come to him. So both he and the IS-8 start taking the shortest possible route towards Cap. And I bet at this moment his heart was in his throat. Because if he can't find artillery, this is going to end up as a draw. And in a draw, everybody loses. So he's closing in on the enemy Cap as fast as he can, and considering that the top speed of this tank is only 35 km an hour, it won't give him much room to breathe. The IS-8 is already a good way ahead and has decided to take the left-hand path in order to scout the opposite side of the map, leaving Boink to take the right. He checks around, see if he can see the artillery in there, and tells the IS-8 to go sit on Cap to draw out artillery. But he's realised there just isn't enough time to win by capping, so the only option they have is to find artillery and kill it. And with only a minute left on the clock, there's not many options left, and the IS-8 has spotted nothing on the left-hand side. So Boink decides to risk it all and mount the railway embankment, giving artillery a clear line of sight to him, if he is at all around where he expects him to be. And there's nothing so far, so is artillery even here? Or is he just sitting in a bush on the opposite side of the map, trying to drag out the game to a draw? The IS-8 is still spotted nothing, but no, Boink has been spotted. Where is he? Artillery fires, misses, takes both his tracks off. He brings his turret around, fires a clutch shot for 8 kills, and a Radley Walters medal topping off this nail-biting match. Now I think I'm going to have to go and have a lie down just from watching that. But first, let's take a look at the post-game stats. So not only did he walk away from that match with an absolute fistful of medals, like a Reaper medal, a Top Gun, a High Caliber, an Ekins Rank 1, and the Radley Walters. He also received 89,000 credits, 2,058 XP non-doubled. He was also unsurprisingly top of his team for both damage and XP, having done over 7,000 damage and getting 1,372 base experience. Now this match was an absolute pleasure to watch, and if any of you guys have any replays that you want to see on this channel, then upload them to either whatreplays.com, replays.quickybaby.com, add a brief description, and post a link to your replay to the comments in this video. But for now, this has been ChaosWulff. Thank you very much for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed watching it. If so, please do consider rating and subscribing, and I'll catch you around.